Let's kick off with a question. What actually happens when we label entire political traditions like leftism as a disease or a threat? At first, it might sound dramatic, maybe even satisfying to some ears, but pause for a second. When we use language that flat, we erase nuance, we ignore history, and we oversimplify a huge spectrum of ideas. Now, you might be thinking, isn't it just shorthand? Everyone knows what I mean. But do they? Imagine if every medical problem was just called a bug, we'd never treat the root cause. The same goes for politics. We can't build healthy institutions if we're demonizing half the toolbox. So, in this episode, I'm inviting you to rethink those labels. Let's dig deeper than scare words and look at how power really works and how systems can serve people rather than divide them. I know, it's tempting to split the world into good guys and bad guys, but democratic life is more like a color wheel than a black and white sketch. And understanding that complexity, that's where real growth, personal and societal, begins. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine moved from the US to Sweden. One broken ankle later, the difference hit home. Not just in billing, but in peace of mind. Universal healthcare isn't a fringe experiment, it's the backbone of many European democracies. The OECD, a club of the world's advanced economies, tracks health spending and outcomes. The technical term here is catastrophic health spending. When medical bills push a family into crisis, countries with public risk pooling, also called national health insurance systems, like France or Denmark, see far fewer families wiped out by surprise bills. Now, you might worry, isn't government healthcare inefficient? Here's the twist. A 2025 study across OECD countries found public systems can outperform private ones on measures like administrative overhead and equitable access. Efficiency isn't just a buzzword, it's measurable. And when policies target what public health experts call social determinants, things like housing and income, they slash unnecessary hospital stays. That's good for budgets and better for people. So the evidence is clear. Social democratic healthcare models don't just sound nice. They actually work defending citizens from ruin and creating healthier societies. And that's not about ideology. It's about results. Let's ask something uncomfortable. Does money talk louder than your vote? Research says far too often it does. In political science, there's a term, elite capture. It means when small, wealthy groups start steering the ship, regardless of what the public wants. Think lobbying, dark money, and campaign finance loopholes. Studies from the US, Germany, and India all paint the same picture. When financial resources correlate with political outcomes, legitimacy erodes. Now, maybe you're skeptical. Isn't this just the way of the world? But it doesn't have to be. There's a tool called the American Anti-Corruption Act, a legal framework for putting transparency and accountability first. Fewer loopholes, stricter rules on lobbying. When these reforms move from paper into practice, public trust grows, and so does representation. It is worth saying that the current US administration has actively paused and changed elements of this act, weakening enforcement, but supposedly increasing transparency. So, if we care about democracy, the real warning sign isn't left or right ideology. It's unchecked financial influence. That's the power we should fear most, and the one we can actually do something about. Have you ever considered why military coups are rare in stable democracies? It comes down to a foundational principle: civilian control over the military and police. Political scientists call this institutional neutrality, the idea that our defense forces serve the Constitution, not a party or politician. Samuel Huntington wrote about this more than half a century ago, and his point still rings true. Where these boundaries blur, democracy falters. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What if politicians themselves are the problem? That's where mechanisms like parliamentary oversight and independent judiciary come in, two technical terms that mean simply that power checks power. The alternative? Militaries or police acting as tools of ideology, not guardians of the public. And history shows where that leads. Repression, not protection. So, the resolution here is simple but powerful. Keep the lines clear. When civilian oversight holds, our institutions stay sturdy and democracy breathes a little easier. Let's cut to the chase. What really threatens freedom? It's not a particular ideology, it's authoritarianism. Across history, whether it's left-wing dictatorships, right-wing autocracies, or theocratic regimes, the common thread is the centralization of authority and the suppression of dissent. Political theorists use the term power concentration. Think of it as all the eggs in one basket and no one allowed to look inside. A classic example of this is the Seven Mountain Mandate and its exponents. Go Google it. Now, you might ask, aren't some leftist policies dangerous? Here's the distinction. Universal health care or fair taxation, for example, aren't about seizing control. They're about distributing risk and opportunity. Most successful, stable European democracies use these tools to build resilience, not repression. So, the real cancer isn't leftism or rightism. It's unchecked power when wealth, institutions, or leaders become unaccountable. Want a just world? Then focus less on slogans, more on structures. That's where real, lasting change starts. Where does all this leave us? Here's a challenge. Next time you hear someone label a policy or a person as a threat because of ideology, pause. Ask, what's the evidence? Who gains and who loses? Why not examine the structure and substance, not just the rhetoric? There's a technical term for this: institutional accountability. It's how resilient societies keep power in check through transparency, civic participation, and democratic safeguards. You don't have to be a policymaker to play your part. Stay informed, ask hard questions, support organizations that push for transparency and equity. Small acts, a letter, a vote, a conversation, add up. That's the democratic multiplier effect. Let me end with this. The healthiest societies aren't those that silence dissent or centralize control. They're the ones where people keep talking, keep questioning, and keep building systems that work for everyone. The future isn't left, right, or center. It's accountable, responsive, and shared. Let's be the ones who build it.